Shu is the god of light or the sky, but really showing light and not the source of light, which is Ra. Ra and Horus are the only gods, if you will, that were right. Ra is the true god, Horus is his son, the archetype of Pharaoh, as Horus, son of Ra. Later on, we see other groups of people confusing the story by emphasizing Horus, son of Osiris and Isis. So Geb is the Egyptian earth god, where Ki, or G, is a Sumerian earth goddess. Geb is a play on words for bag, beg, BG, right? BG, so this is a gender neutral idea as it is applied most commonly, okay, at least. Also jobs and jab. Jab as it pertains to bag is a reference to boxing, right? Keep hope inside the box and not outside where God is said to be above. His source is said to be somewhere else, okay? Ra, the strength of the sun, the source of the sun, okay? The creator God, the beginning. So what you see is the devil energy of rape cults we can pretty much start their treachery with Geb. Okay, Geb usurping Shu, right? Taking over the show. Who teaches who, how, and why? Of course, we have each in the word teach, and we also have T, the feminine suffix. It goes back to misleading, misdirection, and so on. Okay, miseducated. Yeah. So basically, the rape cults have taken over teaching in this kind of worldly, gender-neutral energy, usurping of the show. Okay, they don't usurp Ra or Horus as far as their true spiritual power, just what you can see and who is being taught. And therefore, people are led astray and they don't submit to Pharaoh. Okay, which is ultimately submitting to God through Pharaoh. So as you can see, because of the show and everyone's role in the show, who they claim to be the ideal person, how they've redefined Bastet and Sekhmet and Sobek and Taroet and Satet and Num and so on and so forth, these other deities, okay, which includes the Greco Roman expression, which is really the main expression they use, okay, and they highlight Sumer as well. So if you understand this part, you understand, for the most part, what is going on. It is rape cults trying to force people to do it their way, and there's millions, if not tens of millions of members of these cults directly. There's 2 million Masons in America alone. Now let's consider their family. Masonic lodges were made to take on their families, so, off the record, there's probably another million or so. Not quite sure, but there's hundreds of registered secret societies, and some of them are rather large, okay? And they dominate law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and so on and so forth, okay? And if not that, which is hard to imagine, it is their cultures that dominate it one way or another. And these people are more involved in the social engineering, the culture settings, right? The settings of social norms. So let's consider the sword of Scripture, okay? Okay, why do I use this knife instead of a sword in my demonstrations? Well, part of it is no sword is really made just for my type of hand, right? The big African hand, there is no sword really made for it. These grips are made for smaller hands so they can have a more effective grip on it, and that has an effect on the usage of the weapon overall. But let's consider the paw, or rather the leopard's, claw, if you will. The falcon's talon. These are shorter. The beak, right? The teeth. These are knife-lengthed weapons, right? These are extensions of the hand, and meeting halfway perhaps is the sparring glove. Perhaps it's a shorter knife. Something to that effect. The pharaohs were buried with flint knives. The sword of Scripture is, in a sense, a gender-neutral representation of wielding Scripture. Why? because they've used technology, right? More technology, right? Even though a knife has a certain degree of technology, they're using more technology, right? They're moving away from the spirit and more toward knowledge and the earth, okay? They have a longer weapon instead of a shorter weapon, which is an extension of the body, which the spirit is being conveyed through. This is why sparring to show transferable skills is actually superior, I'd say, to knife fighting, okay? But ultimately, the knife is a way of explaining, and they've slowed down my knife demonstrations, which were very fast, and they've drugged me to a point where I'd be injured if I even try to strike with the knife. Okay. However, you know, I can still outmaneuver anyone on the planet, I'm confident, and strike them down. I would just be very injured if I did so. So moving on. Okay, it is a sword and not a pink straw. Well, give them that. They're still referring to actual combat. Okay. Let's also think about precise. It is a sword and not a club or a bat, because it is precise. It's not as precise as the knife, which is also the Bible's explanation not being as precise as mine. It hardly touches on martial arts, if at all. The sword is also a weapon where you can outmaneuver the enemy, right? It is the sword of Scripture. They do talk about the armor of God. Again, this is moving more toward the earth. The earth is like a ball, bull, Bible, ball, parable, bull. Okay? So let's look at, I don't want to make this video that long. So basically the sword has to do with pinpointing, maneuvering, and passion. Okay? The passion in which it is wielded. When I'm more in the right and I rise up and use my righteous indignation and passion for justice to outmaneuver my enemy and strike him down. This passion is a transferable skill to, for love making as well. This affects one's reproductive cycle. And I would say that it naturally affects the way the genes are distributed. I don't know for sure scientifically, but I have a strong impression and a spiritual belief, if you will, that when you make love with true passion and love, you're more likely to have a more respectable child of God. So when we look at the Apollo form, Apollo is a deity of plague, of poetry. He's also a sun deity in his Apollo Helios type of form. Okay? Helios rides a chariot, right? He uses a bow. He's said to, with his sister, I believe it is Artemis, have invented the bow. He's the destroyer in the Bible, Apollon, to destroy. He slays the python. He is the python, actually, when compared to the true spirit, certainly. Okay. We also get the APEP, right? The Pope cult, okay? That's a story for another day. So, again, we have the wise archer versus the passionate person in the true spirit of God. The wise martial artist, therefore, is superior to the wise archer. So even that explanation is an inferior and more worldly explanation, as they rely on technology and the world. The wind can affect the arrow. Various things in nature can affect the arrow, where martial arts is more face us. Horror, meaning face, is an Egyptian word that means something along the lines of face. Okay. Also being close to danger, right? The archer is far away, he shoots. They may have archers firing back, but so what? It's not the same thing as being up close and personal with somebody, moving with your spirit against theirs, directly clashing with the spirit versus the spirit, if that has launched the arrow. So we must also consider the dark place that the Igbo warriors were in, to some degree, during the Nigerian Civil War. Okay, it is a dark place when this true spirit of God is not conveyed to them. They're fighting for the principles of God. I would say that God was with them to some degree. Okay, but I wouldn't say that they're in the divine order effectively during the Nigerian Civil War. And I'll show you at the end the face. I have videos that I'm going to release where my face does not have as much facial hair as this. I recently saved. When I have the facial hair, it shows a little bit more manly. There's somewhat of an effeminate look in my eyes that the glasses bring out. This is part of Western culture. They've designed these things for whatever reason, whether there's a good reason for it or not, to have an effeminate look on somebody when they wear glasses. It contributes to the gender-neutral culture. I would venture to say that the very words themselves are made for cultures that have more of a written tradition, that have evolved for reading more, And people from my culture, perhaps, to some degree, are perhaps more vulnerable in some ways to needing glasses after you've done a lot of reading. But that's not what happened with me. It was the fuming. Okay, so I'm going to show you my tribe, the Igbo tribe, the tribe of my father's side of the family, has a very serious look on their faces, generally speaking, typically, and so on, right? This is the vast majority of them. The West comes, we have a lot of gay-faced Igbos nowadays. It gets confusing, okay? It also has to do with the warriors being screened out since colonialism in ways, right? You have the relations to the Europeans when they first arrived as colonists. We have the Nigerian Civil War where the people, the sun on the flag, Biafra, they were wiped out in waves, right? Countless Igbo warriors were killed during the Nigerian Civil War, and people who chose to fight to the death were killed off, okay? And my dad came here during the war because he was separated from the group, from his tribe, and he was closer to the airport, so he got on the plane rather than get himself killed, trying to go back and try to assist his fellow man from the outside. All right. So we have to consider the difference between being limited by nature, okay, when receiving the Spirit of God. It is also the difference between the prince and the angry commoner. Okay, so a lot of these guys are warrior guys in the picture I'm going to put here at the end, but they are also more soldiers, whereas I'm more of a prince, but I am in a reduced form. So at the end, I will put a sad martial art picture that I use often that more reflects how I actually look when they are not limiting the spirit, as you start to see it come forth now, as you see these sorts of gestures, more refined, focused gestures that include weapons at times. This is who I really am. And what you see a lot in my videos now is me trying to express truths with my spirit suppressed by drugs and technology that are being used on me against my will. This has to be said quite often because part of the communication is the spirit of communicating martial arts, okay? Maneuvering with the knife, the sword of scripture, okay? I use the sword of scripture. I use the knife of martial arts. I use the spirit of God, and so on and so forth. So again, society is basically run by rape cults who in the idea or the Luciferian energy, or even call it the spirit, of usurping Shu, the show, who teaches who, what, and why. Who, what, when, where, how, why. We see the oral tradition is greatly removed. Are people taught in manhood rituals, for example, by martial art kings and wise elders how to be men? Or are they taught in school how to be less than men? And when they behave like less than men, who is really to blame? You interfere with their manhood rituals. You put on a rape cult show, okay? And everybody plays their part is the idea, or they're screened out. The terms of service, the terms of survival. Jeb disgraced and chased away Shu, the true teacher, who was supposed to show people, okay? He's supposed to show the masses, whereas Horus is the head of his cult. Ra is the priest of Ra, the pharaoh from Nekin, okay? And the neck in as you work out more with martial arts strikes and workout versus the neck out when you come into a state of, of being drugged or of not being a martial artist, right? Neck in. No Khonsu, no Sin, the moon deity, lunatic, lunar cycle, La Lune, meaning the moon. Okay, no La, who's concerned with who lays who. L-A, backwards is all. Okay, it's also lie, to lay, and who, all the deities in rebellion. That's why on, O-N, is a play on words for no backwards, right? To know on and know on. Know the Spirit of God when you see it. The Spirit that I'm starting to come into some degree right now. Okay, and ward it, right? Ward, backwards, is draw. Draw on the earth energy of the rape cult, Jeb and Ki ideas, Anunnaki, those who have defied love and God, and ward, the true Spirit of God, is their idea. I wanted to make this video short, but this is key, okay? Christ, see rise. See rise with the T or without, and why? You should know the answer to this by now. If you don't, watch this video again. There was once a country and now there's a bunch of broken people.